Well, hey there, I want to welcome you to the F1 starting grid. It's our maiden voyage, our very first episode.
Woo.
We've been talking about this for a while, and it's finally happening. So we're gonna spend some time today. We're gonna introduce ourselves. We're gonna talk about why Formula One, why it's important to us, our stories, our journey with F1, and just to give you a sense of just right out of the starting grid why we're doing this. This is the every person F1 podcast. You can go find all kinds of podcasts that are super intricate, got all of the specs and all of the data and all of the politics and all of the stuff. And we might touch on some of that, but really our goal is just to talk about our love of the sport, to have some laughs. And if you're new to the sport, hopefully this kind of fills you in on some of it. We're gonna look back in the history of F1. We're gonna look at historical things that have happened over the years, not just what's currently happening as well. And so, yeah, so this is us. I'm Barry, and with me is Chad and Micah. From time to time, we'll have some other guests with us as well. And we're just going to have fun. So we're just going to chat. So, Chad, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why Formula One. By the way, right out of the gate, you've got the coolest background. You have the Formula One on the wall, so you're the serious guy amongst the three of us
uh,
here.
yeah, my other wall has some other stuff, so maybe another time we'll have a different background. But yeah, yeah, I'm Chad. I would say I'm a newer Formula One fan. I started in probably about 2016, 2017. I had a good friend when my wife and I lived in Colorado who was into it. And just being a good friend, he'd invite me to, go watch a replay of a race or whatever. And we'd hang out. And I had no idea, I have no background in motor racing at any level, NASCAR, Indy, motorcycles. I mean, I just nothing. I love cars and other stuff in that form, but nothing in regarding to racing. I actually more football and some other sports that I've been done myself and been more of a fan of. So this wasn't even on my radar, but started to get into it just because he was really psyched about it, and I wanted to be more educated to be able to talk with him while I was watching races and be able to experience it. So I started jumping a little bit more, and the years went on, and I found a little bit more of my groove and getting more interested. And then, of course, like a lot of the modern day fans, Drive to Survive came out as well, and some other there's some other shows. I'm thinking there was one on Amazon too. I forget what it was called. Uh, oh, there's
Not
another one that
not
was kind of like
not Drive to Survive.
yes. It was another version of it. I think it only
Yeah.
had one season, but it was focused on McLaren, I believe, for a bit. Not anyhow, just got kind of behind the scenes again, got to see a little bit different perspective, which then just caused me to just kind of go head and shoulders in,
Right.
and really dump both feet in. So now I'm huge. I've actually almost altogether stopped watching like football. I was a huge Seahawks fan. I played college football. Like I don't even watch football anymore. Like the Super Bowl came around,
It's
and I was
taken
like,
over.
"Is who's playing in the Super Bowl?" I like I'm talking to my wife. I was like, "Are we going to a party? Are we doing something for the Super Bowl?" Like
Right.
it kind of just snuck up. But the final race of the season, like I had a party at my house because of that, because I definitely wanted to
Right.
celebrate that. So I've kind of shifted around, but yeah, I tend to be a bit of a Red Bull fan, if
Okay.
I'm honest, in terms of my team. Um, I don't know that I necessarily like the Red Bull drivers specifically. I think I just more like the idea of a drinks company being able to come into
Yeah.
a series, a racing series, and not have any, I mean, they don't make cars, they don't do, I mean, that's not their thing,
Right.
right? It's drinks. Yet they are, at the pinnacle of racing, and of course, Max being double world champion now.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I love that. I love that story of just kind of like this outliner, company that comes in and just disrupts things, and is putting all the other cars to shame, some
Yeah.
of these, manufacturers and stuff. So I think that's my team. Driver wise though, I kind of fluctuate though. I mean, I do like Checo. I think
Hmm.
Historia coming through he's kind of been a favorite for me. Of course, Daniel Ricciardo was a favorite for me.
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
seeing him leave really is was a tragedy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I really sad to see him go. And then I think I'm kind of watching Lando Norris kind of come up as well. So,
Hmm.
but of course, the old guys, like seeing Seb leave last year, I almost cried. It was like
Yeah.
seeing somebody like him go off the grid. It was super
Right.
sad. So, I love the sport, man. People ask me who's your team, who's your driver. I'm just like everybody, all of it. I
Whole
mean,
thing.
like
Oh,
I
Right.
don't come on and say like, oh,
Right.
somebody loses, I'm super
yeah.
bummed. I'm just stoked to keep watching it. But those are kind of my favorites. And then I think the historical piece too, like you can't not want Williams to do well. You can't
Right.
have some part of your
Right.
body that I think like wants to see McLaren do well,
Right.
and just kind of some of the older generations. I'm not a Ferrari fan. That's the one, I think, the one caveat with this. I could care less about what Ferrari does or how they do.
That's
To be clean honest, but
I think
um,
you're in good company in that regard. I don't. I have friends who are huge Ferrari fans, and I'm not a Ferrari fan. Like I appreciate the history, of the prancing pony, of what Ferrari has brought to the sport. I Some of my favorite historical cars have been Ferraris. Um, and just beautiful cars. Just I mean, just
yeah,
there's something about the red. But I'm with you. I think there's something about just the holistic nature of the sport, and it's not like you mentioned being a Seahawks fan. I'm a New York Giants fan, and like tends to be like those hard lines. Like I'm this thing and nothing else.
yep,
But
yep,
I love that in Formula One, you can kind of each season, especially as the drivers change or they make changes to their
Right.
cars, or the like, you just go, there's something to get behind. Even the team
Right.
principles, and I think that's something Drive to Survive has really helped bridge that gap a little bit, is what happens behind the
Right.
scenes versus just it being the driver. So that's pretty cool. That's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
Hey,
absolutely,
so
yeah,
I,
Micah, your
I
your
will say
F1
I will
journey.
want, yeah, I will say on that Drive to Survive note, I always want more behind the scenes than we're given a little bit.
Right.
We're actually watching tonight with our friends. It is Friday. Drive to Survive just came out
Yeah.
earlier today. We have some friends coming over. We're going to binge watch, this entire weekend. And one of the things that at least my wife and I are like thinking of is like, even if maybe not everything's super accurate, it's a great recap for us going into the next season.
Yeah.
Because as much as I want to remember every single race last year, there were 22 races last year, like there were so many. And so,
Right.
oh yeah, sorry. So introduce myself. So I'm
Yeah, yeah.
Micah. I've been into Formula One. I remember for a while now, but I honestly, it's weird to think that I'm like kind of a youngster. I'm an infant in the sport. My first race I remember watching was uh, 2019 Australia. I watched it in college because it was a Saturday night. And so I was in the dorm, I was watching it, I put it up on this big screen, and I remember I was so into it. And
Hmm.
none of my friends were into it. And everyone around me was just like, okay, whatever. And for a while, it kind of became like I'm into it, and some of my friends are just not into it. And even my wife, who at the time was my girlfriend, she'd come over to my house and we'd have Formula One on. It was a Sunday afternoon. Of course, you're having Formula One on. And she's just like, I don't care.
Right.
Then we watched Drive to Survive,
And
and she's hugely a fan. She is. And so
yeah.
it's really cool to see how people and I think that nature of the sport itself, and you talked about it, like the nature of the sport itself just brings people in. And I do want to mention, like, this isn't a gatekeeping podcast. We will never like hold people out for not knowing the information because that's not who we are. We want to welcome people into the
sure,
sport. And there's too much of that around where like you don't know the winner of the 1984 Grand Prix. So of
Right.
course you're not going, like, no, like it's okay.
Yeah.
You weren't alive then. It's
Right.
okay. It's okay to not know about something and to come in for the first time. And so I think
Yeah.
that's what I am. And so I want to be that for other people. And so this last year was my first time actually sitting down and watching every single race, and at times at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
My goodness, because it's hard in
Yeah.
America to watch every race live.
It is.
I would say, probably one of my earliest memories. I don't know if you remember this, Dad, but when we drove from Pretoria to Cape Town and we
Yes.
stopped and there was a car.
Yep.
I don't know if it was an actual F1
It
car or
was.
just a display or whatever. And we have a photo of me, and that's probably my first earliest memory
Yeah.
because you would tell us stories about Kyalami, which
Yeah.
hopefully soon, fingers crossed, that can be a new track.
That's right,
I know
that's
they're
right.
developing it soon to be a tier one a grade one track.
Yeah.
So hopefully that can come in. And so that's kind of my earliest memory.
Right.
But now I am very technical. I love the technical side of Formula One. I follow the technical side of Formula One. I love seeing different technologies that teams come out with, different things when it comes to the wing or placement of, it was the barge board and now it's the underbody. And so now different types of technologies, because I really love the innovation type of
Right.
Formula One. More than I just like the drama. I love the technology
Right. The
behind
story.
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I would say like my favorite driver is kind of whatever I'm feeling for that day. Because like you said, I love the sport. I would say like probably I think about it like this. Who would I just be elated if they won? Like if they
Right.
won, who would be
Right.
elated? And I kind of popped into my head. I was like, you know what? If Lando Norris won his first race, if he
Right.
manages to win his first race, elation,
Right.
like
Right. Yeah.
pure
We're gonna be happy
jubilee.
for him. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then I think I would say him and Magnussen are tied for
Yeah.
my favorite driver right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would say that because I cannot tell you how much our group chats popped off when he got pole. Was it in Brazil?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
When he got pole in Brazil,
Yeah.
I was like
Yeah?
shaking. I was shaking because I was so excited. So
That's
Yeah.
so
I think
cool. No, I love it.
whoever is my favorite driver is whoever is in the podium or winning who's not in the big three.
Yeah.
Right.
The big
No,
three
for
being
sure.
Ferrari, Red Bull, and
Yeah.
Mercedes.
Yeah.
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 No, that's cool.
That's interesting.
Well, I think I'm right there with you. And as Micah mentioned, he is my son, and so there's something about I grew up around Formula One. So my story in a nutshell is I grew up in South Africa, and probably about 40 minutes away from Kyalami, which is one of the historic Formula One tracks.
Right.
In fact, it held the distinction of being the highest altitude track, and it created a lot of challenges for the engineers of the time because of the thinner air and the reliability at Kyalami. So if it was known as the track that tested the car to like its max. And like you, Micah, I'm hoping that we can get Kyalami back on the circuit. It'd be awesome to have another Formula One race on the African continent.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's one of the things I love about Formula One is that it truly is an international sport. I think we look at things like here in the US, it's like we have the baseball World Series, but it's not World Series. Now there's international players represented for sure, but not the whole world isn't participating. And that's true of sports here. I think soccer is probably the only other sport that I can think of that is.
But that's every 4 years, right?
Right. And of course you have a lot more people involved. The fact is we're talking about 20 drivers who can participate. So it's a very elite sport in that regard. But I think the fact that if you look at the schedule and how many places in the world Formula One goes is I think that the scope of fans and support for the race, and that's so growing up in South Africa, we were a huge automotive family. We didn't watch other sports. For us, it was cricket and rugby and soccer. We were all about motorsports. So it was Formula One It was all in the Le Mans series, all of the endurance races,
Right.
and then the rally cars. Africa was
Okay.
huge, of
Yeah.
course, for the rally circuits, and so that was, I grew up in a mechanical family. We built a lot,
Yeah.
and we would go to the races. We would go to Kyalami, and I've actually had the opportunity when I was a kid to do a lap around Kyalami, not in a race car, but in a car. So that was kind of cool.
Wow.
You know, and so, but when I moved to the US 30 years ago, my connection with F1 stopped, primarily with
Right.
two reasons. It was pre-internet, right? So there was no way.
Right.
It would made it a lot more difficult. And of course, Formula One didn't have the presence in the US that it now has and is increasing. And so, you know, it was all NASCAR, it was all IndyCar, but Formula One was really pretty much ignored. It wasn't understood. And so I would say for the better part of 25 years, I lost connection with Formula One just because there was no accessibility. And it was really after Micah watched that race in Australia. And then
Yeah.
we started re-engaging as a father and son. And then eventually
I
kind
think
of the
it
whole
was a group
family.
chat with the grandma, right?
My,
The group chat
my,
with grandma
my
popped it
mom,
off.
my mom is a
Yeah.
huge Formula One fan, which is funny because growing up,
Huge Vettel fan.
didn't care about anything car related when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Now, she's probably one of the most
Huge.
passionate people about Formula One that you can find, and it
Wow.
cracks me up.
Oh man.
And
Oh, she's got
so,
her morning tea and she'll wake up for the races. It's
oh my
fantastic.
gosh, it's
Wow.
wild. But I love the international flavor of Formula
Yeah.
One. I love you know, for me, of course, it touches back in my childhood. It's a big part of my childhood.
Right.
That finding that Formula One car in Bloemfontein, South Africa, on the back of a truck. And I went back and researched that car, and that was an old Michael Schumacher car that had been sold to
No.
someone. It was a
I
legit
didn't
Formula
even
One
know that.
car. Yeah. And so like these touch points over the years, you go, this is cool. And then I just remember I loved Hot Wheels. I loved Matchbox cars as we had in South
Yeah,
Africa.
for sure.
And I had a whole series. And then as a kid, I used to have a set called Scalextrics, which was like slot car racing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I had all of F1 cars. I know Chad, one of the ones that you and I have talked about is the Tyrrell.
Tyrrell six wheel. Oh,
Yeah, that
that's my
was
favorite
just
car. It's
right there.
right here.
Yep. So I had that on my Scalextrics set. I would race that. And you know, so just
do you still have that, dude?
I don't. It didn't.
Oh my goodness.
I know
Oh.
it would be worth some money
Oh,
too.
it would seriously.
But
I've tried to
yeah,
get the mini the six wheels, and you know you find those things on eBay. Those things are so expensive now.
they are.
It's
They
crazy.
really are. And then of course Lego, and Micah, you got to show off your McLaren.
Yeah.
Like his
Very good.
decor is out of sight, but he just finished. Yeah, that's really cool.
If you're listening, you can't hear it, but I'm holding a very large.
Exactly.
The only Lego there's two Lego F1 things if you're into Lego memorabilia for Formula One, and the big one is the McLaren. It is technically, and this is the weird part about it, is that it's based off of the 2022 Formula One. If you don't know that much about Formula One, so from 2021 to 2022, there was big regulation changes. The cars changed a lot. So if you see the cars change a lot with if you look at races and they look kind of different, the aerodynamics of the car changed a lot. So they based the Lego set off of a 2022 car, but the livery for 2022 hadn't come out yet for McLaren. So they used the old livery for the new car.
The new car.
I didn't know that.
So the colors are wrong, completely wrong.
See, honestly, you're one of the few people that would know or Yeah. Micah,
Yeah.
our technical advisor in all things Formula One.
Yeah. They're completely wrong because the 2022 car didn't have any of these, and in fact, a lot of the sponsors were changed as well. But it's pretty cool. It's got wet weather tires on it, and they're blue and everything, and it's pretty fun. The other Formula One memorabilia thing that you can buy, I believe I got you, Dad, and you have yet to build it, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I have not had a chance yet.
It's a little, I believe it's a little baby Lewis Hamilton with his car, and then a Formula One AMG, or it's a Mercedes AMG,
Yeah.
their race car that they based off.
I'll have it on the next
Formula
episode
One.
for those of you.
All right.
Watching, I'll show it off next time. Well, I would say as far as team support, I've enjoyed watching Red Bull. I wouldn't say I'm a Red Bull fan. I'm probably less than, this is funny. I grew up as a huge Mercedes fan, but I'm probably less of a Mercedes fan, even less than Ferrari. And I think that's probably more just some of the team inner workings than the cars itself.
Okay.
I have opinions about the Mercedes team, and I'm conflicted because I love George Russell, and I'll just leave it at that.
Oh man, George.
I think
I'm opposite than you. I'm opposite than you in that way because George Russell last year really pissed me off. I mean, come on, it's not bumper cars.
But it makes for interesting racing. Now, I would say I'm a Haas fan. I'm the home team, US-based team.
Right.
I like Haas, and I'm with you, Micah. I love K-Mag, and I got to tell you, to have Nico Hulkenberg back this year as well.
Absolutely.
I'm like rooting for Nico to have his first podium, to finally hit that mark.
Break that curse.
I've heard so many people say they're like the guy has had so many of his chances, and I'm like, okay, but he still hasn't gotten them. So like, why would you not want him to?
What's benefit for Nico, and I think this is what Haas needs, because a few years ago they went full in on rookies, and that did not work at all. Right. No. Nikita had more spins than races. Like, it was insane. We can have a whole episode on Nikita. But what they need is consistent midfield. Right. Like, they're not a pole sitting team. We know this. They need consistent midfield results, and Nico can get them that.
I know I fully agree.
Consistently midfield.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the thing is if you look at the skill of the driver versus the quality of the car that's being produced. Like, you have, even last year, you have Seb, you have Alonso, who are both, former world champions. You've got Hamilton, who struggled last year because as good of a driver as each one of those are proven, if you don't have the car under you to get you there, you're just stuck. And the reality is like a guy like Nico, he's a consistently decent driver, but if you get him in the right car, and Haas with that Ferrari, their powertrain, if they, that power unit, they could turn in some.
Rumor has it that Ferrari, and I'll say this for Ferrari, I'm hoping that Haas has jumped on it, but rumor has it that Ferrari's jumped up their power and reliability this year, and they've really boosted their power. All of these things yet to see, right? We can say everything we can.
Say everything, of course. It's last year our car was fast, but it would blow up. Like,
okay. It doesn't matter how fast you are if you can't get to the finish line. Doesn't matter. Yeah, no, those.
It's so sad to see it. What you said, like world championship drivers and Aston Martin. Towards the beginning of the year, towards the end of the year, it got better, but beginning of the year, it was the worst car on the grid. And Seb was able to pull out something. And the best thing he had all year was an overtake on Magnussen in the US Grand Prix in Austin for the midfield for like 7th place. Like, no, like, this is not the world-winning driver that we know.
Yeah.
And then with Alonso, it was all about reliability. Like, that Alpine did not take him to where he needed to go, and so many missed opportunities. Almost, I think the count was almost 66 points he missed out on because the car broke down.
Oh, wow.
So hoping for better reliability in his new Aston Martin because he has switched teams this year.
That'd be good. So, Chad, what are your predictions? What are you thinking for 2023? What do you think's we're gonna see happen?
Well, I mean, it's hard to look very, very far past Red Bull as
Mhm.
a contender for the championship. I mean, let's be honest. Their car was dominant last year, and if anybody's watched any of the testing the last couple of days, it's right there, right? They didn't make any
Yeah.
crazy changes. It's not like they needed to make any changes. So it's like if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? I mean, let's just keep rolling. So he seems pretty content, happy. You know, I mean, you know, I watched something earlier today, and like, you know, he took off his helmet, and he wasn't like throwing it like he was upset or anything. He's just kind of like, this is normal. This is my car. We're gonna, you know, kill it. As being Max. So, so I think they'll be that. It will be interesting to see, I think, how Checo, where he falls into his role as a number 2 driver. Let's be honest, he is the number 2 driver there. If you have any other thoughts about him, I mean,
someone needs to tell him
Abu
that.
Dhabi 2021. Yeah,
they've built this team around Max and are doing everything to support him. So, yeah, he's the number 2. So now the question is does Checo want to support that and, you know, try to be the best number 2 and get another, you know, a Red Bull team championship or constructors championship, or does he want to try to cause waves and ultimately maybe lose his drive? You know, and then you got the Daniel Ricciardo piece where he's on the team. Like, you know, I don't think a lot of people are thinking he's really challenging for that spot, but I mean, goodness gracious, if Checo all of a sudden does terrible, you throw Daniel in there. You think of just the resurrection of fandom for Red Bull that would come if he came back and was riding with Red Bull. I mean, it would just be. I mean, they already sell millions of Red Bull drinks already. I mean, I just could imagine that just exploding, right? So
no, for sure.
I think there's some interesting.
Well, and there. It's not out of character for Christian Horner and the Red Bull team to make those kind of drastic mid-season changes. I mean, Albon, that was exactly what they did with Alex Albon, and it's, you know, it's hard to imagine a scenario like that with Checo because he is just that good. But yeah, I think for Ricciardo to be back in the Red Bull paddock is significant for him, and if he has a chance, even if just to fill a race or two because one of the drivers can't drive, I think we'll see some pretty incredible results out of Ricciardo as that backup.
Yeah. I agree. So that's my main one. I mean, you can't look past there. Yeah. I think it's going to be. I mean, I'm very interested just to see, you know, can Mercedes, you know, come back to fight. So you know, I think it's ultimately between Ferrari and them to see, you know, who can come back. Interesting that Mercedes doubled down on their design,
their zero pod, right?
Yeah, and you know, I think I don't know. I read a lot of stuff this last year in the off season that, you know, are they going to stay with that? Are they going to scrap it? Are they going to come back with a completely new car? So they came back with it, and you know, are just wanting to develop that. So it'd be really interesting to see if they can get it right. I mean, they're a fantastic team, obviously, and are very good at the arrows. So let's see where that goes. And then of course, I think, you know, Ferrari, seeing if they can actually come back with their reliability this year really is where that kind of and strategy pieces that they really fumbled on last year. So I think, you know, obviously got the big 3. I'd like to just see some fighting at the top.
Right.
I you know, as much as I like Red Bull again, I don't enjoy just having them take off and take the championship.
No, for sure. I'm with you. I think we're gonna just continue to see that you know, the Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes kind of jockeying for that top position. I'm really interested to see how the kind of the best of the rest shakes out this year. And again, like Micah, you keep mentioning, if you're new to Formula One, if you're just starting out, there really are. There's Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes are really the top 3 teams. And then everyone else in the field or kind of that midfield is the best of the rest. And so, you know, to finish in that 4th spot is really significant. And I think I think we're going to see a lot of shakeup. There's a lot of prediction around Aston Martin having a stellar car this year. And they've got, and they've got great drivers this year as well. And, I think that'll be fun to watch. As a lifelong Formula One fan, I'm always secretly, and now not so secretly, rooting for Williams, like you mentioned, Chad. I just always want to see Williams perform well. Like, there's a special
not
place
your
in
year,
my heart
buddy.
for that team.
Not your year.
I'm right there with you. I'm not a lifelong fan, but there's like the history, and the Williams family, and I want them, and when they sold the team to the new Darlington Capital, and I was just like, it was like no, at least they kept the name, but there's something about that this privateer, right? This garage junkie family that just got in there and made it happen. That you don't want that to go away.
No,
you want to see them succeed.
No.
Well, at least you got a U.S. driver now with their new rookie. Well, with Alex Albon and then Logan Sargent is from Florida.
Yeah.
So we now have a U.S. driver in Formula One.
Yeah. And that's another great reason to root for them. It'd be fun to see. The thing that I've gotten into the last few years is watching F2 as well and tracking. Because if you want to see the future of where F1's going, you have to watch F2. And the great thing with Formula 2 is that all the cars are essentially identical. It's not like Formula One where the cars are developed independently of each other. And so it really is a driver's championship. And so you get to see, drivers like Guan Yu Zhou, who came up through Lando Norris and a whole bunch of them, right? There's George Russell, they all came.
Leclerc.
Right.
Russell,
in fact, Leclerc's brother is now driving for, I think he's F2 or F3 this year. I think he's in F2. So it's fun to watch that as well, kind of alongside. They don't have many races, but it is fun to see those drivers kind of getting, prepared for that next step. But I'm looking forward to kind of the midfield battle to see how that shakes out. It'll be cool to see. I think that the porpoising issues from the beginning of last year, it'll be interesting to see if there's any kind of anomalies. It looks like through testing the last couple of days that there hasn't been anything too significant in that regard.
Right. So, we're not hearing about the elusive porpoise anymore. Holy crap.
No more.
Man alive. It was like, got sick of hearing about porpoise.
Oh my gosh.
Porpoise that,
my goodness.
Yep.
I think for this next year, I would say prediction is we're going to see, oh man, I want something crazy, but in my heart, I know. You know what I mean? Like you want something crazy, but in your heart, and it's like Max is going to walk away. I think he's just going to walk away. And by the time of the middle of the season, it's just going to be pretty clear. And my prediction is that the battle for second place is going to be tight. That Sergio's going to want it. Lewis is going to want it. Russell's going to want it. And Ferrari's going to want it. And I believe that midfield battle is going to be absolutely gripping. Because remember at the end of last year, what did it become? Max is going to win the race. We already know that.
Yeah.
Right. He came back from so much. He had a new engine. He came back from 15th last year, and won the race. We know Max is going to win. But then at the end of the year, Mercedes slowly getting up to Ferrari. They're slowly getting their power back. And so I'm hoping to see that little bit more of a tighter battle. Unfortunately, Lewis and Russell, I believe neither of them are going to win or take championship because I believe that they're going to take points from each other. George Russell is not a number 2 driver. They are equal right now. They have shown that they are equal. George Russell came in first time in a Mercedes seat and beat Lewis Hamilton in points his first year. Valtteri could never, unfortunately. As much as I love Valtteri was a number 2 driver and he supported Lewis. I just watched the 2018 season, Russia 2018. Valtteri switched. They switched positions and they Mercedes took away Valtteri's win in 2018.
Right.
And since then, he was their number two. And in that moment, he realized I'm not going to win in this position.
Right.
George Russell is not the same. He's got his elbows out. He's young. He's a little cocky. He's ready to go.
A little.
And he is. He's the
ready to
future
go.
of the Mercedes team.
I mean,
sure.
Sure.
You know, as great a driver as Lewis Hamilton is, and no one can argue with that, he is coming to the end of his career. And so Mercedes is looking ahead. And I think that's what they're expecting of, which I think you're right, Mike. I think it will lead to some aggressive racing. And, you know, I mean,
look back at last year. Who won for Mercedes last year? Lewis didn't win. Russell won a race last year.
Yeah. No, that's
so you have that interesting. But my prediction out of this is I think that Lando is going to be taking over Lewis's seat. I think if Lewis has a bad season this year and doesn't at least
I like that
doesn't beat George, and if they're not competitive, I don't know if he's going to stick it out much longer. I know he
doesn't have
obviously wants another championship.
His abilities.
I'm low key surprised that we even have Hamilton back this season. I thought for a minute there that he might be done.
Really?
I think he's too competitive to let that happen. But if he has another season like last year, I don't see him.
Even if Mercedes, the car is bad in of itself, I mean, I think he could say like, okay, I'll stick it out. Maybe we can get through it. But if he's losing to George and the car's bad,
the W13 last year was pretty horrendous.
It was terrible.
It was pretty bad.
That is so true. You have the teams racing each other, but then the drivers in those teams as well competing against each other. And I think that's, you know, it'll be an interesting year. So if you're watching this online, if you're watching on YouTube, and you have a prediction, enter that into the comments below. Let us know what you're thinking. You can also follow us on Twitter at the F1 Starting Grid. Actually, it's the F1 Start Grid, not the F1 Starting Grid, because it's too many characters. So we had to adapt. So it's the F1 Start Grid. You can hop on Twitter, and thank you, Elon, for that. Hop on Twitter and let us know what your predictions are. But we're excited to kind of go through the season with you, to have these conversations. As I mentioned before, we're going to have guests on from time to time, and we're just going to talk. This is all it's going to be. We'll do some follow-up after races as well, and we'll have some episodes that come out after that. So make sure to like, follow, subscribe, do all of the things that you need to do to stay connected to us. Share this with your friends, share it with your family, share it with people that you know are just getting into F1 for the first time and would want to be a part of the conversation. And we're looking forward to enjoying this 2023 Formula One season with all of you. And guys, it's been super fun. It's fun to hang out and talk Formula One.